We have some of our first Latino lieutenants. I'm very proud of that, and Joe Mayor's very proud of that as well.
Hi friends, it's Josue William Green, and I want to talk about a few stories that have been reported in the media about corruption, allegations of corruption, and misconduct by some of the Lawrence Police Department officers. I think it's important that we examine some of the history here and how the lack of accountability and universally applied standard to all officers has led to this crisis of confidence in the Lawrence Police Department. We are first going to talk about Captain Maurice Aguilar. He was reported to have been placed on leave by the Eagle Tribune and Fox 25 News. Aguilar is a prime example of what can happen when a police officer is not held accountable for his actions. He has a history of volatile, violent, and menacing behavior that has never been checked or addressed by anyone in authority in the police department or the city. Through the course of this video, we will outline multiple incidents involving Aguilar with serious unanswered questions, a refusal to acknowledge what has actually been reported to have happened, and cover-ups. July 23, 2011, Aguilar made an arrest while working a club detail. He went home and the man he arrested was eventually released from custody. Sometime after being released from custody, the suspect made his way to Aguilar's house. Now, Aguilar wrote in his report that the suspect stated that he was going to kill him and that he knew where Aguilar lived. I mean, this is what Aguilar wrote in his report. So I don't know what his response was just hours after the arrest, and this man is at his front door. But Aguilar did write that suspect was going to kill him. So the suspect shows up, like I said, and he didn't get a beating from Aguilar. Instead, Aguilar called the police. Now, this is very strange to me, especially, as someone who used to be a police officer. It's very strange that Aguilar didn't defend his home, didn't defend his wife and children from a suspect that made threatening statements. I mean, these were threats to commit murder, threats to murder Aguilar, and here this man is, and Aguilar goes inside and calls the police. I suppose that the police would have to be called eventually, but I know that my first phone call or action would not be to call the police, not in that scenario. But this is where the story gets really interesting, because the suspect was not arrested and he wasn't held without bail for attempting to make good on a threat to commit murder. Nope, he wasn't arrested at all. And an investigation was conducted into the incident, but someone deleted the body of the report. There's no text. No one knows what that investigation was about and why that suspect who threatened to murder Aguilar was not arrested. Think that's a coincidence? I don't think that's a coincidence at all, but there's more. This suspect had a cell phone on him when he was arrested. In fact, Aguilar makes note of this fact in his report. He wrote that it appeared that the suspect was dialing on his phone. This is contained in his report. Well, this man did have an iPhone when he was taken into custody, yet was not released from custody with his phone. But it was an iPhone. So he used the Find My iPhone app and located the phone. Once this was explained to the responding officers, they knew that Aguilar had taken this prisoner's cell phone home. And the reason that this suspect who made these threats, according to Aguilar's report, arrived at Aguilar's front door was to recover his property. He had no idea that Aguilar lived there. he was following the GPS location of his iPhone. So once the officers on scene realized that they had a mess on their hands and conducted a brief investigation, asked a few questions to figure out what had gone on. In fact, that brief investigation was one that involved the police department pinging the phone for its location to confirm that it was in fact in Aguilar's house. Funny thing, the fact that the phone was in his possession. Now the question is this: was it his intent to give the phone back, or was it his intent to commit larceny from a person? I'm inclined to believe the latter. The report that was written as part of the investigation on scene at Aguilar's home has no text. It has no content. The body of the report has been deleted. The report itself still exists, but any record of what statements were made has been erased, has been deleted. Why would this be deleted? Especially, this is especially suspicious because of the absolute appearance of impropriety of a suspect tracking his stolen iPhone to a police officer's home. I believe the argument could be made that that was an attempted larceny from a person for the felony. Of course, Aguilar will deny this, but I really only have one question to ask. What will the author of that report say?
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying?
On May 5th, 2017, Aguilar was involved in an incident at the police station that was effectively covered up. The Eagle Tribune reported in 3 separate articles that the newspaper had been unsuccessful in obtaining any documentation regarding the investigation or administrative inquiry, as the police department was ambiguous in defining the police work that investigated Aguilar's contact. Sources at the station, including one eyewitness, reported that Aguilar was under the influence of either drugs or alcohol and drove himself to the station, vomited on himself, and even squared off against another officer of rank, effectively challenging him to a fight. The city never released the documents. The video must still exist unless evidence has been destroyed. Nevertheless, the Eagle Tribune published 3 articles between the months of August and September of that year, outlining the difficulty the newspaper was having obtaining any documents surrounding the incident. The Tribune believed correctly that the public deserved to know what type of conduct would require the chief to get out of bed at 1 a.m. and, as the paper reported, drive Aguilar home because Aguilar was unable to drive himself. What would require the officers at the station to call for an ambulance for Aguilar? The Tribune sums it up nicely. They said that simply releasing the report of the police inquiry from that night, as a state official had already ordered the city to do, should settle any lingering question and allow Lawrence citizens to decide whether the way the situation was handled was appropriate. Aguilar's behavior in 2017 was volatile, violent, and involved substance use. The department covered it up and defied an order to release the reports surrounding the incident to the Lawrence Eagle Tribune. The reports have never been released. Although it is clear Aguilar was involved in a serious incident that placed the public in harm's way and thoroughly compromised his ability to effectively fulfill the duties of his leadership role with the department, Mayor Rivera and then Chief Fitzpatrick still promoted him to the rank of lieutenant. In February of 2020, Aguilar was the ranking officer involved in an incident that led to the arrest of an individual and involved several other officers. Aguilar was the officer in command and gave the order to engage in physical violence to arrest a man seated on a sofa.
Can I talk to someone else?
We got anybody else in there? We're going to go hands-on with this.
I didn't commit no crime, sir.
Yeah.
He violated the man's rights and caused false charges to be brought against the individual. Aguilar threatened the man that he was going to treat him like a savage and would even go full savage before ultimately causing multiple officers to literally jump on him.
I talk to you acting like a savage, so I'm gonna treat you savage. We gonna go savage in 2 seconds, dog.
It's 'cause the
A careful review of the video will show that it was physically impossible for the man to have fought back and to have committed the crimes that he was charged with. The charges were absolutely false charges. Aguilar has demonstrated that he has no regard for the rights of individuals and is willing to falsify reports to cover any violation. He was on the scene where white officers were verbally abusive and disrespectful to Spanish-speaking civilians. An officer can be heard referring to a man as being an asshole and stated that the man was not behaving as a human being.
Tell you again.
You want to act like an asshole?
He's not.
Then you're going to act like an asshole. You don't give a name.
I'm not
Now
doing
we have a
anything. I'm not
problem.
doing anything. Back it up.
Okay?
Nyla, record
Fucking
this.
two
Nyla, record
people
this.
right now.
Record this.
What's his
doesn't
name?
speak English.
That's it. He doesn't say what I'm
He
saying.
doesn't speak English, though. He doesn't speak English.
Now we're going to have a problem.
How is he being an asshole? He doesn't
I
speak
asked you a
English.
question too. Give us an answer.
Okay,
We're a
but
human being.
You guys
We're
didn't
here.
tell us the warrant. Where's the warrant? Let
We
me
have
see the
warrant.
warrant.
I have warrant right here. I'm not giving you the warrant. It's up to you.
It is more than clear from the video that Aguilar and his officers were comfortable with intentionally violating rights and disrespecting civilians by suggesting non-English speakers are less than human. It appears that Aguilar is leading by example. An internal affairs complaint was filed, but it was ignored for 4 months. When it was finally addressed, it was a sloppy meeting with Chief Vasque, Aguilar, and the complaining civilians. It is still unknown today what the investigation consisted of, and the civilians that made the complaint have not yet heard what conclusion internal affairs made. Aguilar appears to live above the law, above the obligation to follow LPD policy and procedure. He was promoted to the rank of captain while there was still the open internal affairs investigation.
I didn't commit no crime. I didn't commit no crime for you guys to start pulling people up, and I did people.
We're asking you a question. You have to avoid all the problems.
My granddaughter. Okay,
Sir,
What's his
put the
name?
cigarette
What's
down.
his name?
Do you understand that? We're not going to tell you again.
You want to act like an asshole?
He's not.
Then you're going to act like an asshole. You don't give a name.
I'm not
Now
doing
we have a
anything. I'm not
problem.
doing anything. Back it up.
Okay?
Nyla, record this.
Fucking two
Nyla,
people
record this.
right now.
Record this.
What's
He
his
doesn't
name?
speak English.
That's it. He doesn't say what I'm
He
saying.
doesn't speak English, though. He doesn't speak English.
Now we're going to have a problem.
How is he being an asshole? He doesn't
I
speak
asked
English.
you a question too. Give us an answer.
Okay,
We're a
but
human being.
You guys
We're
didn't tell
here.
us the warrant. Where's the warrant? Let
We
me
have
see the
warrant. I
warrant.
have warrant right here. I'm not giving you the warrant. It's up to you.
Okay, so you guys we
You
go
can't
sleep
even
and we
hear
go
anything
so we
for
go
a
explain. I'm not
specific person. You
committing
don't know
any
who
crime.
he
You guys
is.
asked me. You guys are asking for name more I want to be the dog.
His name is St. John. He's
You
not
guys are asking me and
singing
attacking me.
All we're asking you is for a name.
His name is...
Hand the dog off to your sister.
I don't have to hand off the dog because I'm not doing anything.
You
I'm
understand?
inside my house. I'm not doing
He's telling you to
anything.
do?
Okay.
For your own
listen,
safety, for our safety, he's asking you to do
we're
something.
trying to do this nice. We're
But
trying
I'm
to
not
do
doing
this
anything.
It's gonna happen regardless.
What I'm
However
doing
way
now.
you want
Yo
it,
estoy haciendo.
tenemos orante, estamos buscando a alguien, estamos
Okay,
diciendo que
can we see the warrant?
escucha,
Can we see the warrant?
escucha, porque la mierda se va a poner bien fea aquí adentro, ¿ok? Te estoy dando oportunidad y
Yeah,
estoy
why
tratando de
you
respetar.
always
Pero
like
vamos a
this, bro?
hacerlo.
Why you always
¿ok?
like this? Why
I'm
you
always
always
like
say-
this. You
why you
know
always
me.
like this?
You
Why
know
you
me.
always like
You
this?
know me.
Well, you always, yes, I do.
Yeah, who am I?
Yeah, yes, I don't remember your name, but you always like this, bro. You always act up for no reason, bro.
Well, I'm
This
trying
is
to
why-
talk to you. You
this
acting
is-
like a savage, so I'm gonna treat you savage. We gonna
I'm
go
not acting
savage
like a
in 2
savage.
seconds, dog.
It's because the way you're
What's
acting,
your,
sir.
what's your name,
It's because
sir?
the way you're acting.
What's your
It's
name? I
'cause the way
reason
you're
to believe you're the guy
acting.
we're looking for.
I'm not Julio.
Okay?
I'm not Julio. You should have a picture of Julio.
I'm asking you for your ID.
You should have a picture of
I'm asking
Julio.
you for your
I
ID.
didn't commit no crime. Can I talk to someone else? I
We
didn't
got
commit no
anybody else in
crime.
there? We're gonna go hands on with this.
I didn't commit no crime, sir.
Yeah,
I didn't commit
hey,
no crime.
we're gonna
You're
go
not
hands on.
looking for me. You guys, you're not
I'm
looking for
telling
me. You
you right
have
now,
no
we're gonna
warrant.
go hands on with
You have no
The rest of the house
warrant.
cleared?
You have no warrant.
From what I can
My
see,
name's not
look,
Julio. My name's not Julio.
I didn't get to go into the other room.
My name's not Julio.
I didn't
My
get to go
name's
into the
not
other
Julio.
rooms.
Where's the cigarette down? Hey, Sean, put the cigarette down. Where my phone down?
My name's not Julio.
Cigarette down. Cigarette down.
My name's Alex Rio.
Let's go hands on.
What are you? What are you facing for?
Back away. Back away.
Ah, let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go.
Back away.
Let him go.
Get the dog. Get the dog.
Hands. Put your hands behind your back. Make it easier. Put your hands behind your back. Who's got a knife? The hands behind your back. Watch your back. Okay. Now, the other hand. The other hand. The other hand. They're gonna sweep. Hey, Paul. Yeah. If we find him here, everybody's going. Yep. Okay? Come outside. Come outside. Come get some fresh air. Stand over here, okay? I'm sorry, dear. This wasn't our fault. Okay? Hey.
In Aguilar's latest incident, his menacing, volatile behavior was on full display for the entire community. He was highly intoxicated and been shut off by the bartender. His response was to demand service after identifying himself as a Lawrence police captain with the Lawrence Police Department. Many high-profile local leaders, as well as additional police officers, were in attendance at this event. Although the full details have not been released, there have been enough reports. There have been enough eyewitness accounts reported to me that lead me to believe that this discipline is warranted and quite possibly something harsher. Captain Maurice Aguilar is the second in command in the department and is setting a poor example. How can he lead and earn the respect of the officers that serve under his command when he has demonstrated compromised integrity and general lack of self-control? There should be no question as to why so many young officers want to leave the police department and have already left the police department. This is further punctuated by the lack of interest in young people in becoming police officers. It's becoming incredibly difficult to fill vacant positions. Part of the problem, especially here in Lawrence, is that the leadership is absolutely corrupt.